Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever anybody is. Let's start with this session. And I'm my name is Tony Verheyen. I'm the country manager for Serbia, and previously I've worked on a number of other regions in the bank on public sector management issues and service delivery solutions. Um, I'm presenting today some of the work that we did related to the development of the Smart Proactive Government Model, which was published in a book that we edited together with Jody Kusek and Zubair Bati, called Logged On, Smart Government Solutions from South Asia. This is the part of a webinar series that has as its objective to help practitioners and bank staff think out of the box on service delivery solutions, on service delivery management improvements, and we want to show that even low-cost technology can make a difference if it's deployed in a smart manner. This first session provides an overview of the model, places it in the context of thinking on public management reforms, and also discusses the internal logic of the Smart Proactive Government Model and the modules. We then have 5 more sessions in this webinar series. We will discuss 2 in-depth country case studies, being Albania and Pakistan. Then look at client perspectives and have a presentation from one of the clients that benefited from this work. Then we have deep dives on M&E issues and the economics of using smartphone technology. And finally, we have a sector-specific case that we'll also present. We're also in the process of working with the Open Learning Campus to create a structured e-learning program around the same thematic. I'm co-organizing this series with my colleague Zubair Bati, based in the Pakistan office of the World Bank, and he will lead the next session. Zubair leads work on in this area in different parts of Pakistan, but he's also working on rolling it out to European countries like Albania and Romania. So as a start, we'll take you through a brief presentation outlining the main features of this model, placing it in the context of broader thinking on public management reforms, and then look also at some of the risks inherent in using this approach and how these can be mitigated. We put some of the reference material and links to reference material in the PowerPoint presentation where you can read up more on these issues. Let's move along. The main premise of the book and the model is that emerging and developing economies in particular find it extremely difficult to satisfy their citizens with appropriate quality public services. This is problematic, specifically problematic, because it's these economies that are to be and are expected to be the drivers of economic growth, global economic growth. If we look at what's happened with the deceleration of growth in China and how the world economy has responded to that in recent weeks, we can see how important emerging economies are. If these emerging economies are to perform well, it's the quality of health, education, social safety net programs, and other elements of public services, like services to businesses, that are particularly important. And only if these countries manage to develop and sustain high-quality public services can we expect them to take this lead role in generating global growth. We also know that traditional public management solutions that have been tried and tested in OECD countries in particular have not been able to deliver on the challenge of making better services available to emerging economies. First question that we have is of course, why have previous efforts not produced expected results? Everything we know about public management reforms and issues like thinking like new public management delivery units, results-based management, internal accountability reforms have been tried and tested all over the world globally. Yet they have not been picked up to the extent we had expected and hoped in emerging economies. So the main work and thinking are highlighted here. For instance, the Osborne and Gabler work on bringing entrepreneurial spirit to government, which assumed and worked on bringing private sector solutions into the public sector, like contracting out, market testing, and trying to see to what degree in areas that lend themselves to it, public sector performance and public sector delivery can be guided by private sector solutions. Database monitoring like Deliverology, Tony Blair-driven experiments in the UK that have been emulated in many countries around the world in recent years, which consist of troubleshooting problems in public service delivery, having specific teams around the leader target those problems and finding solutions and helping then organizations in implementing those solutions, followed by a close follow-up on priorities. Using monitoring and incentive tools, the short route to accountability that the bank famously published in the Improving Service Delivery to Citizens WDR some over 10 years ago. Using demand-side approaches to try and push change from the bottom up. And using performance contracting and performance management tools. All of these have been tried globally. All of these have been tried and tested in emerging economies as well, and in developing economies, and have not necessarily been successful. We acknowledge and we believe that these are good ideas, and these are, in fact, elements one shouldn't throw out with the bathwater in the proverbial sense, but elements that we think are important to improving delivery of services were missing. Getting trustworthy data was extremely difficult in the past. One tries to drive reforms by data on what's really happening. One needs to have data that are actionable, precise, and rapid. And that was very difficult for very large government systems with very large number of attendees. Traditional M&E systems that are important are mostly good to track reforms in the long haul, while in reality we want to see rapid feedback to services. We also have seen that regardless of the drive to put in place more demand-side managed reforms, internal accountabilities don't change just by bottom-up push. It needs buy-in from the whole hierarchy, from bottom to top. The other issue is that leadership came from OECD countries on these reform areas, and very often countries look to each other when one thinks about emerging economies and developing countries. And only recently have leaders in countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brazil stepped to the fore on these type of reform areas and reform approaches. Yet we have seen innovation in government, both in service delivery management and real-time service delivery tracking, in making electronic communication technology available to all citizens, providing voice to citizens and clients, shifting powers to citizens to open government, allowing contestability. And we've seen emerging a new generation of leaders, and this may be the most important of all, that are willing to use technology to their advantage, and this can reinforce the other shifts that we were talking about. We've seen innovation in unexpected places, in places like Pakistan, which has a very inadequate reputation when it comes to public service delivery, but yet has seen important experimentation in sectors and in particular geographic areas in delivering better services by using technology. The water and irrigation maintenance tracking system in Sindh in Pakistan is one example. Smartphone monitoring and using dashboards to prevent dengue as a disease in Pakistan, Punjab, brought the incidence of that disease from 21,000 cases to 258 in 1 year. So government can innovate, government can improve. Karnataka and India improved beneficiary verification systems to track maternal health services, and in the political process, electronic monitoring of election processes in countries like India and Afghanistan enhanced credibility. So there are good stories to be told. The problem is that they are very often sector-based and geographically contained. What we believe is that these innovations can be systemized into a model that can be applied across sectors and across countries. The 5 main premises underpinning this model is proactive engagement of citizens, meaning asking citizens for feedback to services. Maybe a relatively straightforward idea, but not usually applied in the public sector. Using smart technology to generate, curate, and apply actionable data by requiring service delivery staff to monitor their own work and providing input directly to dashboards. Using low-cost and easily available technology, combining that with smart use of software like dashboard technology, and create processes that require the engagement of leaders that signal and have the power to signal change and reform orientation. And that built around smart IT platforms. And we're not here talking about big IT systems, but about relatively small, in IT sense, innovative data generation and data tracking systems. And then use performance benchmark to create a positive dynamic around service delivery and communicating that to citizens. The model that we have worked on and that's presented in the book that I referred to has two sides. There's a left side and a right side to the model, and you can see it on this slide. The left side is the traditional approach to public service provision and public service delivery tracking, using incentive management and performance monitoring by government over service providers and service providers providing services to beneficiaries. What is new in the model is the right side of the model, and I will focus in the next few slides on the key features of the right side of the model. The right side of the model that uses smart technology, so smart phone technology mainly, to generate data, and using dashboard technology to process and create actionable information that policymakers then can use to signal the need to change and signal their own intentions to improve public services. So it's a direct line, kind of the short route to accountability, innovated and renewed between citizens, service providers, and government that will accelerate feedback loops and change in service delivery systems. There's 5 solutions that are part of this model. First solution is seeking proactive feedback. Proactive feedback is a feature of many private sector systems. When you check into a hotel, you will usually get your proactive feedback form where the hotel will ask you whether the service was satisfactory or not and what can be done to improve services. Governments don't do that. Governments don't ask their clients what they think of the service that's been provided. And governments were largely unable to do that in the past, and in particular in large systems with a large sense of the population, because they were not able to either catalog or track this type of information. A hotel maybe has 100 or 200 guests. A government may have 100 million citizens that are their clients. Our argument is that the universal ownership of mobile phone has changed this, and that this now allows government to proactively seek feedback and use that feedback to signal where problems lie in public service delivery. This alone is not a panacea, but proactive government will get leaders a better sense of where problems lie in service delivery, and will signal, more importantly, that government cares about getting feedback on the services it provides. In countries where trust between citizens and politicians is low, and many emerging economies have that feature, it's very important to signal the commitment of leaders. Using the voice of chief ministers or other ministers in government with the feedback request tracking system is extremely important. If you get a call from a robocall from the Prime Minister's voice saying, we care about your opinion and we would like to speak to you about your experience in service delivery, you're more likely to take this seriously than if you just get a call from the official that served you or the direct superior of this official. The use of the Prime Minister, the Chief Minister's voice in Punjab, Pakistan, has been a key feature of the success in that province of Pakistan to obtain this type of.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मैं खादिम आला पंजाब मोहम्मद शहबाज
at this point.
आपसे मुखातिब हूँ। आपने कुछ रोज पहले अपनी प्रॉपर्टी रजिस्टर करवाई थी। अगर आपको किसी भी किस्म की परेशानी का सामना करना पड़ा या किसी ने नाजायज पैसे वसूल किए,
announcement by the robocall voice of the Chief Minister that a call will be coming your way to check on your experience in registering your property. And please provide us feedback. We care about you providing feedback. The voice of officials has been used also in other countries where this model has been deployed and has been seen as extremely important to get citizens to respond. And response rates vary between 10 and 20% in countries, which is quite high, given how what a similar track records would be in the private sector. The second part, and I'll skip this slide in the interest of time. The second part of the solution is collecting real-time performance information from the point of delivery. This means equipping officials that provide services with GPS and smartphone tagging to verify that their activity and track their performance. It allows to review both the quantitative activity, is enough service provided, and the qualitative activity by recording the feedback of those that are served by that official. It also looks at whether the visits are well spread, whether the attendance by these officials is relevant to the client. Of course, one can make many arguments about the complications that are inherent in this process. But if officials know that they have to record the pattern of their visit and the outcome of their visit, this of course changes also the game in terms of their willingness to provide the service. Combining proactive feedback, which means the feedback obtained by asking citizens for their experience, and the input provided by the official on services provided, can be powerful in terms of confronting confronting the perceived service delivery and perceived service received, and helps tracking the service delivery performance. In a simple way, this sequence of slides shows how this works. In the past, input in data was provided by fixed facilities and roving officials. They had to enter data and consolidate data themselves, and the output would be monthly or quarterly reports, which may come late, and that may be monitored and tracked against performance management indicators. If one does the direct route of using a smartphone, one doesn't need the process, and one can directly go to an output that is processed through a dashboard, and that gives a leader an immediate and actionable sense of what the output and what the service delivered is. It uses cataloging as well. This is a sheet that's used to catalog the feedback coming from proactive feedback collected on a service delivery point. You can make that visible to a leader what the exact feedback is. The third element, and a very critical element of the model, is using common dashboards. Dashboards are not new. Dashboard technology has been around for a long time, but they are a pivotal part of the whole model and the story. What's new is that dashboard technology allows direct transfer of data and transformation of data into action-oriented messages to decision makers. And having a well-calibrated IT team or a contractor that can run dashboard technology is very critical, because without this, a lot of the input loses its value. Data output of this nature can easily help you track where teacher attendance, for instance, in schools is lower than expected, and which districts perform under expectations when it comes to teacher presence in class. It can show you where vaccination efforts to the population are falling short. This chart shows the population against vaccinations. It will show you then that in areas that are quite well populated, no vaccination services are practically provided. So it allows you then to troubleshoot where the problem lies and send instructions down the line that service delivery has to be better balanced to ensure that all citizens get vaccinated and protected from disease. The fourth element of the solution is really around leadership. It's nudging champions from above. It's making sure that personal commitment of leaders is obtained and that these leaders stay with the system, that their staying power of the political leadership and the administrative leadership over service delivery reforms. For this to happen, data needs to be actionable and usable immediately. If actionable and usable data are used to hold managers accountable, incentive systems will start changing. One doesn't need a formal civil service reform to start changing behaviors in administration, and that's the premise of part of this work. Simultaneous experimentation is another important feature of the model. Don't be afraid of trying many things at the same time. Mix and match with approaches to reform and bring innovations simultaneously online, rather than piloting and testing in specific areas and specific sectors. Back to the model then, and see how these elements add up. So the proactive feedback is a feature of the interaction between the beneficiaries and the dashboard. The data on performance is a feature of the interaction between the service providers and the dashboard. The confrontation of these two elements takes place through the dashboard, which transforms this into actionable data that gets fed back to government, that can use it to send signals to the service providers about what needs to change in the way services are delivered. Beneficiaries will then notice this feedback, and if all goes well, the next time that services are delivered, the feedback will improve over time. So the 5 solutions that I mentioned are really a feature of the right-hand side of the model that's presented here. There are many barriers to implementing such reforms. We're well aware of them. There are privacy concerns with registering mobile phone numbers of citizens, and there's always a risk of retaliation or attempted retaliation of officials and citizens from which they have noted the phone numbers. Cheap technologies are not always attractive. There are no kickbacks, no large IT contracts, so not very interesting for those that like to provide packages and off-the-shelf solutions to governments. There's a strong concern with gaming, providing false phone numbers, giving numbers of middlemen, all distorts the data that government gets through proactive feedback. So building data control mechanisms to make sure that one weeds out false phone numbers by following up with officials that provide a lot of false phone numbers, getting the number of middlemen registered, the phone numbers of middlemen that keep reoccurring registered and not, and excluding those from the feedback, are all ways of controlling data. There are barriers to entry, of course, and there are disadvantaged groups that may not have access and may not have mobile phone ownership. That's a very serious problem, because these are exactly the kind of people that are usually disadvantaged also in getting the services. And of course, vested interest will resist and try and continue the habits that they used to from the past. These are all valid concerns that need to be recognized and that need to be continuously addressed when introducing reforms of this nature. We believe that these risks can be mitigated. Of course, this needs to go hand in hand with the internal reform of accountability systems. In the end, if officials are not held accountable for implementing changes that are ordered and initiated by political leaders, the best efforts will not lead to any results. The investment in designing planning is critical, and specifically any efforts to mitigate gaming risks. One needs to give attention to cultural sensitivities. In many places, a male agent calling a female client would not be well received, and therefore one needs to make sure that one is gender balanced and gender sensitive to registering and using feedback. The publication of results is critical. If citizens see that voice matters and that results are published on websites, on notice boards, and so on, they will take a stake in the process, which they will not do otherwise if they do not see results. Finally, then, can this work in any settings? This particular initiative emerged in South Asia, which is home to some of the most frozen and closed public sector management systems in the world. Yet, the approach made a difference exactly in that type of environment. The initial automations of service delivery processes helps in enhancing demand for faster and better services. And then the definition of holistic processes can emerge from there. Our view is that whenever smartphone technology is widespread and whenever political leaders are willing to invest in better service delivery, this approach can take root. The fact that it's being rolled out across countries like Pakistan and India and is being used now also in European countries like Albania and Romania as a first signal that this is an attractive way of addressing very deep-seated problems in service delivery. Let me finish with a brief video that shares some of the results of some of the initial work that was done in Pakistan, and then we'll turn to questions. Okay, I believe that it's now time to go to some of the questions that we have prepared for those that were participating. First is the question of what stopped previous reform approaches from making a material change to service delivery in emerging and developing economies. And you can give more than one answer to that one. The time lags in understanding results combined with a short time horizon of decision making is one. Lack of staying powers among leaders is another factor. Lack of funds for implementation, a third one. Ability of public servants to derail reforms because of information monopolies, a fourth one. And opposition from citizens, another one. So the question here is which one is which among those answers would be most reflective of reality? Can I open it up? Yeah, I see the points on the time lags and the ability to derail reforms because of information monopolies, and these are of course exactly the kind of issues that make it difficult for new public management reform type driven reforms to deliver change. And let's move to the next question, which is a question about this is the third one instead of the second one. Yeah. So what type of reforms can improve monitoring of service provision with better quality and data help with? Can it help with allocation of resources to frontline service providers, provision of individualized incentives to service providers, improved outsourcing of service delivery, improved possibilities of public-private partnerships, middle management service delivery, performance management, or trade policy development? Again, more answers than one are possible. Allocation of resources is definitely one of the issues, but also the middle management service delivery performance is one that can be driven by better data, in particular because it removes information monopolies from further down the line. Let's go to the next one. Why dashboard technology is critical to public sector performance improvement? I've highlighted that as a critical element of the model. So does it allow us to track progress in reform implementation, because it removes information monopolies, allows to connect feedback with self-reported delivery, and can help in generating prosecutions. Again, more than one answer would be possible. Definitely, the connection of feedback with self-reported delivery is critical. The removal of information monopolies is also an important feature of dashboard technology, even though dashboard technology on its own will not provide it. It needs to be combined with other measures. So let's go to the last question. What can proactively seeking citizens' feedback help with? Communicate state interest to citizen well-being, help with performance management of middle managers, get information about quality of service delivery, pursue large corruption cases, or seek information where citizens may be colluding with service providers for private benefits. Any answers? Definitely that one is one of them. collusion is not an easy one to identify, but it is possible to identify some of it or there is a possibility to identify that through this proactive feedback mechanism. But to communicate the state interest in citizen well-being is one that nobody answered or nobody used, and is actually a very important feature of this particular element of the model. So that ends the questions that we have put together. Now let's see whether questions from participants that we can answer at this point in time. So any questions from others? Everything was very clear, then maybe we can elaborate on some of the features of this if one wants to go back to some of the elements of the work. And this is that in terms of how this has been used in World Bank projects. Maybe this is something that we can say a little bit more about, especially for those that have an interest in that. Actually, the first public sector program for results lending that the World Bank did in the public sector management area was around this model. In this case, Pakistan Punjab, where the approach was tested to basically scale up the experiments that had been ongoing for several years on public sector performance work through proactive feedback. Then was scaled up in a large government program that was addressing a number of sectors, and you saw the data on that in the infographic, and institutionalize it across the system. This program is now being scaled up because of its success. The Albania program now includes a citizen-centric services project that has many of the features of this model as well, and we're now working on a program in Romania as well that have similar elements. Several Indian states have programs in place that look at comprehensively addressing comprehensively using a combination of proactive feedback with monitoring by service providers and dashboard technology to keep track of reforms and their implementation. So a number of bank program initiative and bank finance initiatives in place at this point in time. So that's maybe something further to add on the practical applicability of this model and this approach. Other than that, if no further questions, I'd like to thank you for your attention and participation in the session. And if there's any follow-up questions by email, please route them to the organizers. And it was a pleasure to share this information today.